Hello, this is Mr. Hoff, and we're going to paint a monster. We're going to be using watercolor, and one of the things I learned was to let the paints do their thing. So as I begin painting, I'm wondering what water would do. Like, what does water do with the paint? If I go ahead and put our wet on wet technique, will the water keep the paint from leaking into my sketched monster? So let's go ahead and bathe around the monster. I'm going to keep him, we're going to keep a night sky. So we'll have a theme, we'll have a little night sky going. And I'll go ahead and put the monster. And sure enough, look at what happens here. I use primarily cool colors. I seem to wonder what happens when we mix these colors. How will the colors thing? And you can see what happens with the color. I wonder if how this happens, where the water is actually creating a barrier, kind of bubbles over and doesn't allow the paint to flow into the drier area. Sure, paint's flowing freely in my wet areas. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add different colors and see how they mix and see if there's a dominant color. Okay. And I'm even going to throw a little red in there and let that let the color red mix with my blues. And what it should do is it probably get us to the darkest purples. Okay? And I want the mixing to be free. And I want to study the color and what it does as it bleeds. Okay? But I'm not worried about mistakes. I think sometimes we go into it with a fixed mindset. That means we want a certain outcome. And if we do that with watercolor, I'm afraid we're going to be disappointed more than we're happy. So I'm going to continue to lay color down with a growth mindset. I'm just going to paint freely and let the colors mix. In the end, we'll get some light spots and some dark spots, and we'll have the illusion that later we'd be able to mix. We'll be able to add, maybe with an oil pastel, some stars. But right now, I'm going to go up to my edges. I'm going to continue to apply the wet on wet. Now, as this gets dry, as we go ahead and clean the brush, and see just a little tinge of blue. The same thing applies to my monster. Okay, so I want to go ahead and add a little contrast. So I'm going to lay some yellow into my monster, and red. These are my warm colors. I wonder, as I do this, is dry enough. So I go ahead, I wonder if it'll bleed back and forth. And I like that. I want that, a little bit of bleeding back and forth so we can get some value.